Hi, I'm Ellie Bladon. I'm Station Manager here at Cam FM, and today I'm going to be running a tutorial on how to conduct interviews remotely. Because of COVID, lots of people can't or don't feel comfortable with coming to you for an interview, but you shouldn't see this as an insurmountable barrier to having interviews on your shows. In fact, it can be an amazing opportunity because you can essentially widen the pool of potential interviewees to pretty much anyone around the world. Over lockdown and still now, I've been recording a lot of interviews with scientists for my science radio show Us and STEM. So I think I've picked up a few good tips along the way which might make this a little bit easier for you. For this tutorial, I'm going to be using Zoom. I find that the audio on it is pretty good, and for me, it's preferable to Skype from an audio perspective. There are other options available. So Louis, our head of publicity, uses Discord, and apparently the audio on that's pretty good too. Now, usually I would book to have a guest in, but today, because this is just a tutorial, I have roped in a scientist, Dr. Andrew Bladon, who also happens to be my husband, so went along with this. So let's boot up Zoom and I can go through the process. Okay, so we've got our Zoom call up, and the first thing I'm going to do is to try and put my interviewee at ease by just saying hi, seeing how they're doing, and having a little chat through about how the interview is going to work and when they can listen to it on Cam FM. Now, this is more important if you've got a guest who's not particularly used to doing media things, or if you don't know them so well. So in this case, I do know Andrew, so we don't need to worry so much about that. But another important thing I'm doing while I'm checking this is how their audio quality sounds. So specifically, if they are too quiet or too loud, and whether they therefore need to move closer or further away from the microphone. So just for that purpose, Andrew, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Andrew Bladon and I'm a research associate in the Department of Zoology at the University of Cambridge.
Great, so Andrew's audio sounds fine, so I'm not worried about that at all. So what I'm going to do is start recording. Now, I think it's good etiquette just to warn your guests you're about to do this, although it's about to come obvious to them as well. So I'm going to do this by going down to the record button at the bottom of the screen, pressing that, and you can see up here there's a little clip saying that they're recording. Right, so now we're ready to go. And one thing to think about is if there's a continuous low-level noise in your interviewee's room. Now, this might be something quite quiet, maybe like their computer fan or an air conditioning unit, something that they can't really get rid of. So if you have got this, the best way to start is to ask them for 5 seconds of silence. And this is just really good for being able to isolate that sort of continuous low-level noise so that you can remove it later in post-production. If you have any queries about how to do that, you can either Google it or just email us at committee@camfm.co.uk and we'd be happy to help you. But at the moment, Andrew's room is relatively quiet, so we're not going to worry about that. So I'm going to launch straight into the interview. So I'm going to start off with some quite easy questions just to ease them in. I'm going to, for example, ask them to introduce themselves. And then I'm going to start off with general questions, in my case, because I do a science show, about their work and the way that they work and where they do what they do. But then, once the audience has got to know them a little bit better and they've eased into the interview, I can start asking those more probing, deeper questions. Now, this is easier if I'm doing an interview for someone who's not relatively well known or someone who's maybe not so high profile, like Andrew here. But it's a bit trickier if you've, say, got Boris Johnson on the other line, because for one thing, most people probably know who he is. And secondly, he probably doesn't have so much time to have small talk. So you want to get in there with the juicy stuff before his time runs out. But we have Andrew here, so I'm not going to give you any deep and probing questions today. But let's pretend that that's what we've just done. And we've got all the content out of the way of the interview. We've had a nice long interview, all very interesting. And now we're going to finish it up. So what I make sure I do is I say thank you to my interviewee. You may not use this on the interview itself, but it's always good to capture it just in case. So thank you very much, Andrew, for joining us today and being so chatty about all of your interesting work.
Thanks for having me.
Great, so now we're finished for the interview portion, and I'm going to finish recording that screen by pressing on that button up there in the left-hand corner. So now the recording portion is over, but again, it's probably just good etiquette to have a quick debrief with your interviewee. And again, this is easier when your interviewee isn't rushing off to another political interview or something. But generally, if someone's not so high profile, I'll sort of let them know when the interview is going to be aired. I will just check they were happy with the interview. And, if you get on really well with them, you might end up having a more continued chat, and that's great. And then when we're time to finish, obviously I'll thank Andrew again for his time. And we're going to go down into the end button down here and finish that off. Thank you, Andrew.
Bye.
And end meeting for all. Now you'll see that Zoom is converting your meeting recording into a file. And this is the important thing. So this is where your recording from the Zoom conversation is going to turn into a usable file for you. Now, if you don't know where this file is going to end up, generally your computer will just make a file which will be called Zoom. And in that folder, you've got this file here, which is called audio only. Now that's an M4A. You can just dump that straight into your editing software, and that is your whole interview. That's got both sides of the interview, your interviewer and you yourself, and it's now ready to be edited. I find that this is the simplest way to conduct an interview remotely, but if you are particularly concerned about audio quality and you know that your interviewee has a reasonable mic, then you could conduct a Skype or a Zoom interview, but also ask your guest and you yourself record your own audio separately, and then they can send you their file, you have your file, and you sync up the two in post-production. Now this has the benefit of, if you both have a reasonable mic and you've got pretty good acoustics, then the audio will sound better. But of course it has a couple of disadvantages. So firstly, if you're talking to someone very high profile, they probably don't have the time to want to send you their side of the recording. And also it will take more time from your end. You're going to have to sync up that audio and sort of listen to it a little bit more carefully. But if you do want to do that, it's something you're interested in. I haven't covered it in this tutorial today. I've tried to do everything based on the computer mics. But if you are interested, then do email committee@camfm.co.uk and we can give you a little bit more information on that. So I hope that this tutorial has been useful. This has just been a very quick guide to conducting interviews remotely. There are of course other things you can learn, and do feel free to get in touch with the committee if you want more information. But in the meantime, it may be daunting to do your first interview remotely, but do go ahead. Whether you're more of a Graham Norton or a Michelle Hussein, we would love to feature your interviews in a show on CamFM.